Welcome back, everyone. This is a chess video. Now, today I play like Magnus Carlsen, except I don't. And yeah, well, I loaded up a 3+2 game and absolutely destroyed my unfortunate opponent. Now, this is a 1000 game, so there are blunders, there are mistakes, and misses. Well, for me, there were no blunders, but every blunder was on his side because I am frankly Magnus Carlsen and probably better than Stockfish. Therefore, you know. Anyways, I have decided to provide an analysis because I have not played a brilliant move in a while. And yeah, let's get into it. Foreshadowing. So, my unfortunate opponent from India plays on his first move e4. And this is a great opening. E4 generally is a good idea to put your pawns in the center. Even d4 here is a great idea. Control the center and bring out your knights. Now, e4 is a great idea to sometimes then play d4 uh, and bring out your knights, bring out your bishops, develop your d pawn. Sometimes it's generally a good idea to uh, play your bishop out first, your light square bishop out first, so that after that you can play d4, d3 or d4. Generally, it's better to play d3 to support your center pawn, who's taking control of the center, and yeah, develop your dark square bishop out this way, or even to the e3 square, and generally white has a better position. For example, if I play c5 here, this is called the bishop's opening, uh, where it's sort of like an opposing London system, where, for example, the Sicilian variation, white is generally looking for trades, so sometimes in some variations want to get a position like this, where you have a really nice pawn structure, where after takes, you just have full control of the center. Now, of course, this pawn is hanging, but let's just say it's not, and it's protected. Something like, sorry, oh my God. Something like this is a really great idea. Therefore, yeah, e4 is just generally a nice opening. We get c5, the most cutting edge line, uh, for e4, the most combative ways to play the opening of chess, Sicilian. Now we get, of course, the classic knight of three, uh, open Sicilian, sorry, close Sicilian, and I generally just like to play e6. For anything, I just like to play this French variation Sicilian. Now, there are two variations of the French Sicilian. One of them is, well, the French variation, and sometimes even I plays this, and it's still a French. It's a bolder attack, but it's sort of the same structure because after something like check here and takes, white just white has an imbalanced structure, but yeah, it's really similar to the French because after takes, white does have a huge huge advantage because this is no longer gone, and the rook just has a very free uh, d file, and this pawn is free to march upwards. This bishop free to develop this direction or this direction to put pressure, and yeah, it's a really nice variation. I just love this opening, especially the bolder attack. So generally, it's not a good idea to develop your bishop into e6. As you can see, the computer already gives black a 0.26 advantage. So yeah, but we don't get any of that. And it's also important to note that if white plays something like d4 immediately, which is the Smith-Morra gambit, I can go for a Franco-Sicilian, which I prefer. Now, of course, in the Smith-Morra, usually you play c6, d4, and then something like knight f3, if I'm not mistaken, and then e5 would be played to counter gambit. This is, of course, the Paul Morphy gambit, named after the legendary chess player Paul Morphy. Well, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. And basically, you give up this pawn, And in return, you get queen e5 check, and you pick up the knight. You just pick up the knight. It's just a free knight. And black has a commanding advantage because white is simply just down a knight. So yeah, I mean, if you're down a horse, if you lost your horse, frankly, that's just sad. But we don't get any of that. We get knight c3, uh, followed by my favorite e6, and after this position, we have a classic French where I love to have this active bishop over here on this diagonal. Now, as you can see, the computer is already saying that black has equalized because, well, one, black has a center pawn. Now, although white does have the extra knight, this knight is really inactive, right? So let's say in this position, the knight can only go to a couple squares, right? It doesn't really control any of the squares. It can only go to this square, this square, and this square. Now, this square is just simply on developing the knight, which is just a bad idea. If you jump here, you basically do achieve nothing. In fact, I can go here, takes, and I just have a really active queen. Now I have two active pieces, and white only has one. Now, of course, the engine says this is a bad idea because of queen e2 check, and yeah, black has a really tough time defending. Let's if I play something like this, it's uppo spaghettios, queen b5 check. If I'm not mistaken, something like this, takes, and now it's white who has more pieces developed, but yeah, it's just terrible. So instead we get bishop e5 after this. Now again, this is not that good of a move. You do put pressure on the knight, but one thing, the bishop can come here, and you can actually, in most lines, in fact, I did play this. I just ignore completely this threat, this pressure, because although, yes, I do lose the pawn, but I gambit the pawn and well, I just develop. I play something like, say, bishop e4, immediately counter pressuring your knight. Just now it was my knight who was being pressured by white's dark square bishop. Now it's my dark square bishop. Sorry. Now it's my dark square bishop pressuring your knight. And it's actually quite hard to defend because, well, again, you can't castle because you just lose a pawn right back. And not only that, my queen is incredibly active. Yes, you can argue that all my pieces are just completely inactive, but my queen is the most active piece on the board, and it's also the piece that's bringing the most benefit. So white can't slack off and play. Of course, usually this would work if the rook wasn't here. So say uh something like this was played. White just has a White just, sorry, something like this. White just straight up has a queen sacrifice, which, yeah, if you take, it's just mate on the back rank from the back, which is a terrible way to go out. But instead we get bishop d3, which is, well, it's a good move. And I just put rook e8, sorry, no spoilers. So I throw in a check, rook e8, which is the top engine move, putting pressure in the middle. If the king just moves away, now the king can no longer castle. It's important to note that. And if you can't block with the knight because I stake, and you can't really block with the bishop because I lose a pawn, and I'm just frankly up a pawn, and you have to block anyway. So white, of course, finds the best move, knight e2, which is actually one of the top engine moves. The engine somehow prefers bishop e2 more, which, I mean, it's not a human move. Uh, it does give a slight advantage, which is, I can see that you're opening up your queen and re-attacking this pawn, but it's not really that big of a deal. I mean, it's just a bishop. So yeah, instead, white put blocks with the knight because obviously you wanted a more active bishop on this square in the center rather than here where the bishop is blocked by the knight and only controls two diagonals. So after this, we get bishop g4, pressuring the knights over here. Now, it is better to play apparently h6 to kick the bishop out. Now, this does force white into a decision to either play bishop h4, uh, trying to induce this move, trying to provoke black to play this move. But actually, this with old computers, with older computers, it does, it is actually not that certain. No, sorry, it's not that clear. It is actually, they do usually say that this is a really bad position for black because of the open king. This king is really weak. All right, and the queen can come in and really exploit these, whereas this knight is really weak, only being protected by your strongest piece, which can be easily attracted away. So yeah, this knight is really hard to defend. Your king is also really hard to defend, and frankly, the only thing protecting the bishop from going there, putting pressure on the diagonal. Over here is your rook and your queen and your knight can actually really easily just get completely bulldozed and bullied. So yeah, it's really bad. But with modern engines, it's actually not that bad because you do restrict the dark square bishops, and frankly, you just trade off uh, your knight for their white's white square bishop, and it's not that bad for black actually in this position. So yeah, and sometimes you do just want to take over here, and computer does say that this does give a slight advantage because the queen pressures this diagonally, force the opponent to have to play a move like say something like this to block the queen from this diagonal from pressuring your rook. But actually, it's apparently better to go here and give up the pawn completely. I guess because now this knight is free and you can play something like knight f4. Uh, yeah, just pressuring everything with these knights who are incredibly active, and you will just simply win this pawn. But well, it's the 1000 level, so we don't get that. However, none of that was played, and white just simply plays queen d2. Uh, sorry, sorry, I played bishop d4, and white plays queen d2, attacking, sorry, protecting the bishop. So if anything happens, well, nothing really will happen. And yeah, now we get knight b7, protecting the knight. This is generally just a good idea to protect the knight so that you can free up your queen into, say, something like, say, castles. Now I have queen b6, putting pressure here. If you play something like this, it's a really bad position. And yeah, there are many ideas here. For example, I can just free up my knight and trade your light square bishop off, which is more active. So yeah, this just b takes d4 and takes with the rook or even the pawn, and it's just really nice, a really nice position for black. And yeah, as you can see, the computer does bless this with a sorry, a minus 1.8 advantage in favor of black. Now we don't get any of that. Instead, it's the pawn kicks out the bishop, and I play this, which is a slight inaccuracy. Uh, Computer does say it's better to take over here to ruin your structure, but frankly, it's actually not that easy to play this, especially as a 1000, because it's quite hard to defend against this rook that's coming to pressure. Over on the g file, this pawn that's just gonna march up the board and completely destroy my structure. This pawn was also gonna march up the board and punish me if I ever do try to play the move g6 or even h7 or sorry, h6 or f6. I can't speak. And yeah, and it just gives them better control of the center. And it's quite hard to play this position, even if white does have this bad pawn structure. Of course, this pawn is really weak. I could just play something like this, pressuring the pawn again, but just oh. And white can actually just give up this pawn, and it's well, not that, but it's actually quite hard to defend here against something like some knight c3 pressuring the center and doing a lot of shenanigans. It's just hard, but apparently just h6 and the bishop is kind of harassed. Well, you don't get any of that, and instead you get h3. The bishop gets kicked out, and now of course white should take and trade this light square bishop. Sorry, trade this light square bishop. And even though my king is really weak on the h file, it's actually not that easy for white to attack me on this side because of this pawn. Because this pawn fights for the h5 square with the knight, which you can't just take like this, because my knight will just pop in and, protect the h5 square. But of course, apparently, oh, and white does is actually somehow surviving, somehow hitting a quite probable position. But yeah, it's all that, but we don't get any of that. Instead, black blunders the sole position, plays h4. Now, of course, the best move in this position is the uh, bishop e4, which is just, I mean, that is not human. That is not a human move. Now, of course, other ideas like queen b6 still work. I did look at queen b6, but yeah, I didn't really see the threat of it because after this, I, I was scared I was gonna blunder something, but or even after something like, you know, uh, bishop back, something like that, or even oh, it's actually not that bad because after this, white just comes in and wins this pawn, and I didn't really see uh, the big threat that, well, the everything was. But yeah, so instead, we get the move h6, trying to kick the bishop out. Now, of course, white should trade the bishops, and white doesn't. Now, of course, I should take the bishop, but I was being a troll, so I instead moved my bishop back to h7, which is actually not that bad of a move. Now, of course, the best move is to take, but what my argument here is that you can never attack me because you no longer have the light square bishop, and if you move your queen up, well, I just come back to h6, h8, or g8, and I just have the light square bishops off, and my dark square bishop is really strong as compared to white's, so I should be able to do well. Now instead we get the move takes and u5, which is just it's a bad move. Apparently in this position, white should have just taken, go there, and castle queenside. And then, with this battery over here, it's actually not that easy to defend against white, which actually that's false. It's quite easy to defend against white. Just take the queen out, takes. Even something like this, it's not that bad actually. Because you could just go something like even knight takes f2, completely giving up the bishop is fine because yeah, you take the rook. So yeah, knight takes f2. Danger levels. Rook is 5 points, bishop is 3.5. So you take the bishop, you lose the rook, and you just add a 2.5 disadvantage. Now, of course, the engine says it's a +2 advantage, but frankly, it's not. Bishops are, of course, better than knights in the end, and knights are worth 3. So, yeah, bishop should be worth more. Anyways, we get move g5, which is just a terrible move. You should take my bishop and not pressure anymore, because frankly, you're just gonna. Now, the best move here is knight e4. Completely blocking the trade. Basically, you didn't trade my light square bishop when you have the chance to. So now I'm not going to let you trade my light square bishop. If you want to trade, it's going to have to be with my knight, which is bad because this position is in the end quite open. And once you let me get this, I have constant pressure on your knight and the rook. You have to move your rook or your knight, otherwise you completely lose the game. Now we get the best move b takes e4, and I take with the rook, which is not the most accurate move. I should have taken with the d pawn and went for a queen straight like this because now I just have an active d file. My rooks are active and my pawns are really ready to march down if he ever castles queen side, and if he castles king side, my rooks are just too strong to handle. But of course we get none of that. So we get rook takes e4, g takes h6, which is again a blunder, because in this position I can play the move that I completely missed, queen of 6, pressuring the rook, because this does not come with check. Now usually if this pawn were to be on some square like this, well, maybe for something like this and this, it's not that good to play bishop queen here anymore because I have this, and if you play king takes, it's not that easy. Sorry, it's still actually just quite easy to defend against this. You just castle, or even just bring your queen out somewhere. Actually, the queen cannot go out, but yeah, you get my point. And in this position, it's not that easy to defend. I mean, computer does says it's -5, but you have pressure here on the light squares, so it's actually quite hard. We get rook takes e4, takes 6. So I never saw anything, and now white has a commanding advantage if and only if white plays the move rook g1 check, the only winning move in this position, and white, being 1128 rated, didn't find it. And not only did white not find the only winning move in the position, white blunders a pawn, and the queen. And suddenly, white, who saw a glimpse of happiness from the evaluation, is now completely losing once again. Now, if anyone wonders why can't you take the rook, well, he can. He can. But the queen is sacked. And all this is played. Now, what white had to do in this position after bishop takes, white had to find king e1, sidestepping from this bishop pin. Because when you play king b1, you have to go, what can my opponent move to, right? When my bishop's here, I have just this really strong diagonal, okay, but the rook is pressure. The rook is blocking the bishop, so it's not really a threat. This rook can come here, but it needs time to attack, so yeah, it's not really a move. And the way you think in chess is you have to think first from your opponent's perspective. You can't just go, oh, I'm pressuring this pawn. Basically, you don't just go, ooga, 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 ooga. You don't go, oh, I'm pressuring this pawn. I should pressure it more and lose everything. How you think in chess is what can attack you. And yes, in this position, b3, this is the threat. And the way you see this is, well, how can I defend this? How can I best defend against this? Can I play a move that protects the square? Can I move my knight here, or here, or here to protect the square? The answer is no. Well, what's the other best move? Well, what is this? What is bishop e3 actually threatening? It threatens my queen, but it also threatens my king because of x-ray. So if my queen moves, so in this position, if my queen moves, my king's going to get taken. So you have to think like that. So you say, oh, so what can I play? Well, the only move has to be king b1, because now this king is out of the pin. So if this queen takes, and rook takes, and this position's not that bad. Now this bishop is pressuring, so you should just go here. So you should go here somewhere in the future, or even something like this, trying to support this square. But in this position, frankly, it's not that hard to play because you have threats like this. Of course, this bishop is still there, but yeah, it's not that hard to play for white. However, of course, white gets tunnel vision, and after bishop takes f2, he went ooga, 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 ooga. Me, go here. Me, pressure pawn. Me, go here. Me, pressure pawn. And completely loses the game. And now I play rook c8, which is the top engine move. Now, why is rook c8 the top engine move? Because it puts pressure on the king. This pawn is being attacked by this bishop already. So generally in chess, when something is being attacked, it's a good idea to stockpile pressure on it. And this position, it's better this way because this rook is now pinning the pawn to the king, and you're guaranteed to win the pawn almost. Now white has in order to defend, play something like this, and after this is really not that easy to defend because now, sorry, not that, of course, that blunders the queen, but something like this, trying to stockpile pressure, and it's really not that hard to play. I can even stack the bishop here, and even after this, because I win the knight, and even if white does have ideas like this, white doesn't really have a follow-up after this, or even this, which is completely bogus. I mean, that's just gangster, really. But yeah, that's just a good idea. Instead, we get rook h3 check immediately, which is not top engine move. The engine actually stupidly asking for white to go back because it's trying to defend uh, against, well, everything. But it's actually not that easy to play this because you do invite threats to your rook. Your rook is now completely unprotected. I can even threaten it with the queen. But yeah, and also this move is actually quite genius because it does protect this c2 square. So I guess it's quite human after all. But nobody at 1000 level plays this except me because I am obviously Magnus Carlsen, and if not, I'm better than Magnus Carlsen, Stockfish, even Deep Blue, and Leela, Torch, and all the engines combined. So yeah, but we don't get that, and we instead get Rook H1 check, which is completely losing, and then get King H8, C3. Now C3 is just a great idea to defend this pawn against anything. But in this position, it was actually better to play rook d f1, trying to stockpile pressure. More pressure on the queen, just completely giving up this. Sorry, not the queen. The king side, last king side, completely giving up this pawn. But well, now the difference is, well, if you play something like this now, check, you're forced to go here. And when you go king b1, now anywhere my rook goes, the bishop checks the king. So my rook goes here, it's a check. And then you have to come back, check there. And then, yeah, it's just a helicopter. I can go here and trade. And yeah, it's actually not that good because I don't really get any play. But I can play something like queen b6. And then if you play something like this, it's just mate in one. The only move here is to play d3. And I can just, in this position, play queen a5, threatening mate. And yeah, it's just completely undefendable because after this I just go here, and yeah, white is completely lost. So yeah, c3 is just a good move in general, actually, to play in a lower level. So yeah, Stockfish just does not understand humans, I guess. So after this, I play queen a5, trying to stockpile pressure on the king. I already had pressure here, so I play queen a5. And this is actually the top engine move. The other options here were queen d7, which is, I mean, it's stupid. And trying to sidestep away from any rook g8 ideas in the future. And even something like d4 works, trying to put pressure here. d8 I can take because this pawn is being pinned down by the king, so it cannot take back. I'm putting pressure here. And yeah, it's just generally a good position. And over here, yeah, it's just those two lines really. But yeah, instead of take queen a5, and white plays a3. Now, if you notice, the evaluation bar becomes a BMW model. It's now M2. Why? Well, first things first, A3 does not defend against anything. A3 does not defend against anything. Why? Why does it not defend against anything? Well, first of all, your king is completely cut off and completely smothered by his own pieces. Can't go anywhere. So you have to make a clear sacrifice. This is why the advantage is, even though I only have a 2-point material advantage in this position, the advantage is completely with black. -6. Why? Because white has to sacrifice in this position. White has to sacrifice. If not, the position's completely lost. The top engine move here is to play rook g6 so that the king can go back to b1. No, but Ash, why is this b1 square so important? Why is this b1 square so important? Why is this diagonal so important? Because, well, if you're a viewer of higher level, a higher understanding of chess, you're in for a treat. You're in for a real treat. Because in this position, I sacrifice. Zara! Rook takes c3. Okay. I can't yell. It's just not a good idea for me to yell. Yep, but yeah, rook takes c3. This is driven a brilliant move by chess.com. Why is this a brilliant move? Because now white can only take with the b pawn. That's the white's only move. This is a forced move, a forced sequence. But now when I flip with the queen, white has no escape squares. Queen is checking the king, covering these two squares. And my bishop's covering every escape square that the king can go to. And this king is being smothered by his own pieces. White, unknowing, doomed himself a3 and invited in a rook sacrifice. Which is, I mean, it's crazy. This is crazy stuff. And I'm really proud of finding this move. Getting to this mate. And yeah, there's a lot to learn from this game. A lot to learn. And even from White's perspective, White made loads of mistakes, and that's generally a good idea to learn from mistakes, especially from other people's mistakes. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. And yeah, I'll make more chess videos soon, if I have time. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Get out of here.